Childhood and family background. Severus Snape was born to a witch mother named Eileen Prince and a muggle father named Tobias Snape. The environment he was raised in was emotionally unstable and hostile. They lived in a grim industrial area known as Spinner's End, a poor and desolate neighborhood bordered by a river. The home was not only bleak in appearance but toxic in atmosphere. Snape's parents were frequently at odds, and their constant arguing became the backdrop of his formative years. Tobias Snape was known to be a cold, irritable man, described by Severus himself as someone who doesn't like anything much. This emotional unavailability, paired with a volatile temper, made him particularly difficult to please. Meanwhile, Eileen Prince, though a witch, was no source of comfort either. She was described as thin, sallow-faced, and sour-looking. Her resemblance to Severus was striking, but her emotional warmth was lacking. This domestic situation created a deeply isolated and unhappy child. Severus longed to escape the oppressive atmosphere of his home. He fixated on the idea of turning 11 and finally leaving for Hogwarts. That distant promise of magic, freedom, and reinvention became a psychological lifeline. Before his escape to the wizarding world, one brief spark of light appeared in his life, a red-headed muggle-born girl who lived nearby, Lily Evans. She represented everything Severus lacked: warmth, curiosity, and joy. Early friendship with Lily Evans. Severus Snape's first encounter with Lily Evans marked a significant shift in his life. He had noticed strange occurrences around her, traits he recognized as signs of latent magical ability. With great anticipation, he told Lily that she was a witch. The moment did not go as he had imagined. Lily, unfamiliar with the wizarding world and deeply confused by the term, was initially offended. The situation escalated when Snape referred to Lily's sister Petunia as a muggle, a term Petunia didn't understand, but interpreted as an insult due to Snape's tone. Petunia angrily pulled Lily away, telling her they were leaving. Lily followed, casting Snape a glare that crushed his expectations. Despite the poor start, Lily gradually began to trust Severus. The two developed a bond built on their shared curiosity about magic. During one of their secret meetings in the woods, Snape introduced her to concepts such as Hogwarts, the Ministry of Magic, Azkaban, Dementors, and underage sorcery. When Lily questioned whether her muggle-born status would affect how she was treated, Snape reassured her that it made no difference. Their growing friendship was tested one day when Petunia, hiding behind a bush, overheard their conversation. She lashed out at Snape, mocking his worn clothes and asking if he was wearing his mother's blouse. As she turned to leave, a branch fell on her shoulder. Lily instantly accused Severus of hexing her. Though he denied it, her trust wavered, and she ran after her sister, hurt and suspicious. The strain between Lily and Petunia deepened. On the day they were to board the Hogwarts Express, Snape watched from a distance as Petunia lashed out again, calling Lily and Severus freaks. Lily burst into tears, referencing a letter Petunia had secretly written to Dumbledore, one that begged to be allowed to attend Hogwarts alongside her sister. The rejection letter from Dumbledore had been polite, but it reinforced Petunia's exclusion and resentment. On the train, Lily confided in Snape about her pain. In a moment meant to cheer her, Snape excitedly said, "You'd better be in Slytherin." This sparked a confrontation with a boy named James Potter, who announced that he hoped to be in Gryffindor. Snape sneered at the idea, drawing attention from James and his new friend Sirius Black. Their snide remarks began what would become one of the bitterest rivalries in the series. Despite this, Lily and Severus sat together for much of the train ride, clinging to their fragile but promising connection. First years at Hogwarts. Upon arrival at Hogwarts, Severus Snape was sorted into Slytherin House. His friend Lily Evans was sorted into Gryffindor. This created a divide, as students from these two houses typically held opposing values and rivalries. Snape quickly showed exceptional skill in potions and defense against the dark arts. He customized his potions textbook with personal annotations and corrections. These modifications often improved the instructions and outcomes, indicating advanced understanding. He also created original spells, including Sectum Sempra, a curse designed to inflict deep, blade-like wounds. Snape adopted the alias the Half-Blood Prince. This name referenced his mixed heritage, his mother being a witch with the maiden name Prince, and his father being a non-magical muggle. The label reflected both his blood status and his maternal lineage. During his early years, Snape developed animosity toward a group of Gryffindor students: James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. They frequently bullied Snape, calling him Snivelous and performing public humiliations. One incident involved Sirius misleading Snape into entering the Shrieking Shack while Lupin, a werewolf, was inside. James intervened at the last minute, preventing a fatal encounter. Snape refused to acknowledge any gratitude toward James, claiming he only acted to protect himself and his friends from potential consequences. These confrontations solidified mutual hostility between Snape and the Marauders. Despite the bullying, Snape remained academically focused. However, he also began aligning himself with students who practiced or endorsed dark magic. This group formed part of the future Death Eater Circle. Their behavior, such as cruelty toward other students and interest in forbidden spells, was a growing concern to observers, including Lily Evans. Collapse of friendship with Lily. During his time at Hogwarts, Severus Snape maintained a friendship with Lily Evans, despite being sorted into rival houses. Over time, however, the friendship began to deteriorate due to ideological differences and peer associations. Snape became increasingly aligned with Slytherin students who displayed an interest in dark magic. Lily, along with her Gryffindor friends, disapproved of these associations. She directly confronted Snape about the behavior of his friends, criticizing their use of dark arts and their cruel treatment of other students. Snape reacted defensively and attempted to shift the focus toward James Potter and his friends, accusing them of wrongdoing as well. Lily dismissed this comparison, stating that while James and his group were troublemakers, they did not engage in dark magic. The conversation revealed a deepening ideological rift, with Lily expressing concern over Snape's values and behavior. The final rupture occurred in their 5th year after a public incident by the Black Lake. James Potter and Sirius Black attacked Snape in front of other students. Snape attempted to retaliate with a spell, but James overpowered him and levitated him upside down. Lily intervened and demanded that James release him. James complied, but when Snape regained his footing, he insulted Lily by calling her a filthy mudblood. The term mudblood is a derogatory slur used to insult Muggle-born witches and wizards. Its use, especially toward Lily, was a severe breach of trust. Despite multiple attempts by Snape to apologize afterward, Lily refused reconciliation. She stated that she had made excuses for him for too long, and accused him of gravitating toward people who aimed to become Death Eaters. Snape did not deny the accusation. This incident ended their friendship permanently. From that point forward, Lily distanced herself from Snape entirely, while Snape immersed himself further in the ideology and social circles of future Death Eaters. Joining the Death Eaters. Following the breakdown of his friendship with Lily Evans, Severus Snape fully integrated into the circle of Slytherin students who were sympathetic to dark arts ideology. Many of these individuals would go on to become Death Eaters, followers of Lord Voldemort.
Look at me. How can you live with yourself, Lucius?
Snape pursued the study of dark magic and began aligning himself with Voldemort's rising movement. His motivation included personal bitterness, social ambition, and a desire for power. By the time he left Hogwarts, Snape was considered a loyal servant of Voldemort. At Voldemort's direction, Snape applied for a teaching position at Hogwarts. The goal was to gain proximity to Dumbledore and report back information to the Dark Lord. This marked the beginning of Snape's formal role as a spy. While carrying out his duties, Snape overheard a critical prophecy made by Sybil Trelawney during her job interview with Dumbledore. The prophecy described a child born at the end of July who would have the power to vanquish Voldemort. Snape delivered this partial prophecy to Voldemort. Voldemort interpreted the prophecy as referring to Harry Potter, the son of James and Lily Potter. As a result, he targeted the Potters for elimination. Snape, upon realizing that Voldemort intended to kill Lily, his childhood friend and the person he had long loved, panicked. He pleaded with Voldemort to spare her life but made no such plea for her husband or child. Unable to guarantee Lily's safety, Snape turned to Dumbledore. He confessed what he had done and begged Dumbledore to protect the entire Potter family. Dumbledore, disgusted by Snape's selective concern, initially refused. He questioned whether Snape cared only about Lily and not the lives of James or Harry. Snape ultimately agreed to protect all three in exchange for Dumbledore's help. Despite Dumbledore's efforts to shield the Potters, their trust in the wrong person, Peter Pettigrew, led to their betrayal. Voldemort discovered their location and murdered James and Lily. However, when he attempted to kill Harry, the spell backfired due to the magical protection Lily gave her son by sacrificing her life. The death of Lily Evans had a profound and immediate impact on Snape. He was described as collapsing in grief, appearing as a man who had lived through a century of suffering in a single moment. This event triggered Snape's complete defection from Voldemort's cause. After Lily's death, the turn. Following the death of Lily Evans, Severus Snape permanently severed ties with Lord Voldemort and committed himself to protecting her son, Harry Potter. He returned to Dumbledore, devastated, and reaffirmed his willingness to do anything necessary to make amends. Dumbledore challenged Snape's motivations, but Snape confirmed that his loyalty remained with her memory alone. Dumbledore then gave Snape a clear directive. If he truly loved Lily, he must protect her child, not just out of guilt, but to ensure her sacrifice was not in vain. Snape reluctantly agreed. This marked the beginning of Snape's dual role as a professor at Hogwarts and a covert operative working for Dumbledore. Snape was assigned the position of potions master at Hogwarts and later became head of Slytherin House. Although he maintained a cold and antagonistic demeanor, particularly toward Harry, he followed Dumbledore's instructions to the letter. Despite personal resentment toward James Potter, whom Harry resembled, Snape ensured the boy remained physically safe at all times. During Harry's first year, Snape closely monitored defense against the dark arts professor Quirrell. He discovered that Quirrell had brought a troll into the castle as a distraction to gain access to the Philosopher's Stone. Snape intervened and sustained an injury from the three-headed dog guarding the stone. Later, during a Quidditch match, Snape performed counter-curses to protect Harry from Quirrell's sabotage. These actions were not motivated by affection, but by duty. Dumbledore believed Snape was repaying the life debt he owed James Potter. Snape neither confirmed nor denied this, but he continued to fulfill the protective role. And over the next several years, Snape maintained his position at Hogwarts while continuing to provide Dumbledore with intelligence. Outwardly, he showed favoritism toward Slytherin students and harshness toward Gryffindors, reinforcing his cover. Internally, he remained aligned with Dumbledore's goals. Becoming a triple agent. When Voldemort regained power, Severus Snape's role expanded. He transitioned from being a double agent, loyal to Dumbledore while pretending to serve Voldemort, to a triple agent. This meant Snape was now reporting to Voldemort, while secretly continuing to act on Dumbledore's instructions, all while maintaining his role within the Hogwarts staff. After Voldemort's partial return during the events of the Triwizard Tournament, he summoned his Death Eaters. Snape did not respond immediately. 2 hours later, at Dumbledore's instruction, he returned to Voldemort with an explanation. He had remained at Hogwarts to protect himself while Voldemort was presumed dead. He claimed loyalty but cited practicality for his delay, explaining that having Dumbledore as an alibi offered him protection. Voldemort accepted the explanation. Snape's value was tied to his access to Dumbledore and the Order of the Phoenix, as well as his considerable skill in occlumency, the magical art of blocking others from reading one's mind. This ability allowed him to hide his true allegiances from Voldemort, who was otherwise unmatched in legitimacy. Snape began feeding Voldemort selected intelligence about the Order. He withheld critical information while providing just enough detail to maintain credibility. At the same time, he continued to pass more significant truths to Dumbledore. This balancing act required continuous risk and absolute control over his own thoughts and emotions. Snape also joined the Order of the Phoenix, reinforcing the illusion that he was a reformed Death Eater now fighting against Voldemort. The Order accepted him largely due to Dumbledore's personal guarantee of his loyalty. Throughout this period, Snape operated under extreme scrutiny. Both Dumbledore and Voldemort believed he was working for them, while his actual loyalty remained hidden behind his mastery of deception and mind control. His position was dangerous but essential to both sides' strategic movements during the Second Wizarding War. The Unbreakable Vow and Dumbledore's Plan. Shortly before Harry's 6th year at Hogwarts, Dumbledore was cursed by a Horcrux, a ring that had once belonged to Voldemort's family. The curse was fatal, spreading rapidly through his body. Snape managed to contain the curse to Dumbledore's hand, but informed him that it would eventually kill him, likely within 1 year. Recognizing that his time was limited, Dumbledore devised a long-term strategy. He revealed to Snape that Voldemort had ordered Draco Malfoy to kill him as punishment for Lucius Malfoy's repeated failures. Dumbledore feared that Draco, still a school-aged boy, would be morally destroyed by committing murder. He asked Snape to monitor Draco, offer him help, and ultimately, if necessary, be the one to kill Dumbledore himself. Dumbledore's reasoning was that his death was inevitable, and allowing Snape to perform the act would spare Draco's soul and preserve Snape's credibility with Voldemort. Snape initially resisted, but Dumbledore insisted, arguing that Snape had already agreed to protect the students and must follow through with the plan. Snape eventually accepted the task. Soon after, Draco's mother, Narcissa Malfoy, approached Snape at Spinner's End. Accompanied by her sister Bellatrix Lestrange, Narcissa begged Snape to protect her son and help him complete the mission Voldemort had assigned. Bellatrix, skeptical of Snape's loyalty, demanded proof of his commitment. To secure their trust, Snape agreed to make an unbreakable vow, a magical contract that results in death if broken. The vow required Snape to watch over Draco, protect him from harm, and if Draco failed, carry out the mission himself by killing Dumbledore. Snape sealed the vow with Bellatrix acting as the bonder. This unbreakable vow aligned perfectly with Dumbledore's private instructions, though Voldemort and the Death Eaters saw it as proof of Snape's absolute loyalty to the Dark Lord. Dumbledore's final instructions. During the same year he was cursed, Dumbledore gave Severus Snape one final directive that extended beyond the assassination plan. He informed Snape of a deeper truth concerning Harry Potter and the nature of Voldemort's immortality. Dumbledore explained that when Voldemort attempted to kill Harry as a baby, a fragment of his soul unintentionally latched onto the child. As a result, Harry became an unintentional Horcrux. This revelation meant that Voldemort could not be destroyed unless Harry himself died. Moreover, Voldemort had to be the one to kill him, as the connection between them was magical in nature. Dumbledore instructed Snape to pass this information on to Harry at the appropriate time, specifically when Voldemort began to treat his snake Nagini with visible caution and protectiveness. This would signal that the final stage of the plan was near. Upon hearing this, Snape reacted with anger and disbelief. He argued that he had acted for years under the assumption that the mission was to protect Lily's son. Dumbledore acknowledged that their original objective had changed and that Harry had to be prepared for death. Snape accused Dumbledore of raising the boy like livestock for slaughter.
You've been raising him like a pig for slaughter.
Dumbledore asked whether Snape had grown to care for the boy himself. Snape did not answer verbally but responded by conjuring a silver doe Patronus, identical to Lily Evans's. This visual confirmation demonstrated that Snape's loyalty to Lily had remained unchanged.
Always.
This moment confirmed to Dumbledore that Snape would follow through with the final request. Snape's continued protection of Harry and obedience to the broader mission were now tied not just to strategy, but to deeply held personal convictions tied to Lily's memory. The death of Dumbledore. Near the end of Harry's 6th year, Draco Malfoy's mission to kill Albus Dumbledore reached a critical point. He successfully disarmed and cornered Dumbledore atop the astronomy tower, but was unable to perform the killing curse. Dumbledore, already weakened by the Horcrux curse, remained calm and subtly waited for Snape to arrive. Moments later, Severus Snape entered the scene. Without hesitation, and as previously agreed, he cast the killing curse, Avada Kedavra,
Avada Kedavra.
striking Dumbledore and sending him over the tower's edge. This act completed both his promise to Dumbledore and the terms of the unbreakable vow he had made with Narcissa Malfoy. Snape then fled the castle alongside Draco, Bellatrix Lestrange, and other Death Eaters who had infiltrated Hogwarts. On the way out, Harry pursued them and attempted to stop Snape. During the encounter, Harry attacked him with multiple spells, all of which Snape deflected effortlessly. Harry accused him of cowardice for killing Dumbledore and fleeing. In response, Snape revealed that he was the Half-Blood Prince, the creator of the spells in Harry's old potions textbook.
You dare use my own spells against me, Potter.
When Harry continued to insult him, calling him a coward again, Snape's reaction was immediate and intense. He shouted, "Don't call me a coward!" indicating the depth of personal offense he took at the accusation, especially considering the sacrifices he had made under extreme personal risk. Following Dumbledore's death, Snape fully assumed the role Voldemort expected of him, loyal Death Eater and newly appointed headmaster of Hogwarts. However, he continued to act on the final instructions given to him by Dumbledore, balancing the appearance of loyalty to Voldemort while preserving the broader goals of the Resistance from within. Secret help to the Order. After Dumbledore's death, Severus Snape was appointed headmaster of Hogwarts. Although he appeared to be enforcing Voldemort's control over the school, he continued operating according to Dumbledore's instructions. His true allegiance remained with the Resistance, and he used his authority to protect students where possible while maintaining the illusion of loyalty to the Dark Lord. One of Snape's key acts of subterfuge involved the Sword of Gryffindor. Knowing its importance in destroying Horcruxes, Snape secretly removed the real sword from Dumbledore's office and replaced it with a fake. He concealed the genuine sword behind a portrait in the headmaster's office, out of the Ministry's reach. The fake sword was later handed over to the Ministry of Magic, fulfilling legal expectations while keeping the real weapon secure for Harry. Later, when the portrait of Dumbledore learned that Harry, Ron, and Hermione were camping in the Forest of Dean, it instructed Snape to deliver the real sword to them, but without revealing himself. Dumbledore warned that if Voldemort accessed Harry's thoughts and saw Snape helping him, it would compromise Snape's position. Following this directive, Snape traveled to the forest and used his Patronus, a silver doe matching Lily Evans's, to guide Harry to the sword's hidden location. Snape remained unseen. In another covert move, Snape met with Mundungus Fletcher and used an unforgivable curse to compel him to suggest using decoy Harry Potter's during the escape from Privet Drive. Snape then passed the real departure date to Voldemort, preserving his cover. During the aerial battle that followed, Snape attempted to protect members of the Order. He aimed a Sectum Sempra curse at a Death Eater who had a wand pointed at Remus Lupin. The spell missed and struck George Weasley instead, resulting in the loss of his ear. Snape also visited the Old Order of the Phoenix headquarters and found a letter Lily had written to Sirius Black. He tore the photograph it contained, keeping only the part showing Lily and baby Harry, and pocketed the section of the letter signed, "Lots of love, Lily." These actions were done in private and left no trace of interference. Despite his visible role as a Death Eater, Snape continually carried out protective measures behind the scenes, adhering strictly to the obligations Dumbledore had placed upon him. Final betrayal and death. As the Battle of Hogwarts unfolded, Voldemort summoned Severus Snape to the Shrieking Shack. By this point, Voldemort had begun to suspect that the Elder Wand, now in his possession, was not working at full power. Believing that its allegiance still lay with Snape, who had killed Dumbledore, Voldemort concluded that Snape must die in order to transfer the wand's true loyalty. Voldemort did not kill Snape with the wand itself. Instead, he ordered his snake Nagini to attack. The snake bit and fatally wounded Snape, causing massive blood loss. Voldemort left, assuming the task was complete. As Snape lay dying, Harry, who had been hidden nearby under his invisibility cloak, revealed himself. Snape saw him and attempted to speak. Unable to say much, he directed Harry to take the memories from his mind. These memories, collected in a flask, would reveal the full truth of Snape's actions over the years. The memories showed that Snape had always been working for Dumbledore, had never ceased to love Lily Evans, and had committed himself to protecting Harry, not out of affection, but as a consequence of that enduring loyalty. They also confirmed the final piece of Dumbledore's plan. Harry had to die in order to destroy the piece of Voldemort's soul inside him. Snape's final act was to ensure Harry received this information. His last visible response was to look into Harry's green eyes, identical to Lily's. After that, he ceased moving. His body was left in the shack, but his memories reshaped the narrative of the war. They exposed his true role as a triple agent and demonstrated that many of his harshest actions had been calculated choices required to maintain his cover. His death was the result of Voldemort's misunderstanding of wand lore, not a failure of allegiance. You've just seen the full story of Severus Snape, from student to spy to sacrifice. But there's one part of his legacy most people overlook: the spells. Because beyond the potions and double lives, Snape left behind magical inventions that even the most skilled wizards couldn't match. Sectum Sempra, a blade without a hilt, a curse without remorse to mutilate. Its very name fuses Latin roots, sectum, meaning cut, and sempra, meaning always. In essence, the always cutting curse. Upon casting, the spell behaves like an invisible sword, lashing deep into its victim with unseen slashes. It bypasses physical armor and ignores human hesitation. The result? Deep lacerations, rapid blood loss, and immediate collapse. But Sectum Sempra is more than a weapon. It's a manifestation of defensive darkness, a calculated curse designed not for showmanship, but for survival, but in fear. The spell is not classified as one of the 3 unforgivable curses, yet its brutality rivals them. That distinction, that loophole, makes it even more dangerous. Sectum Sempra is rarely cast in battle due to its uncontrollable violence. When used, it's a last resort, a spell of finality. It cuts deeper than the body. It cuts into intent. Vulnera Sanentur. Not all creators of dark magic provide a cure. Severus Snape did. Vulnera Sanentur is the only known counter-curse to Sectum Sempra, a healing incantation so advanced it borders on magical surgery. Where common charms like Episci close surface wounds, Vulnera Sanentur reaches deeper. It reverses hemorrhaging, knits torn flesh, and halts death in progress. Its name is pure Latin. Vulnera meaning wounds, and Sanentur meaning may they be healed. The phrase itself is poetic, and the casting must be as well. The spell is not barked in urgency. It's murmured in cadence, 3 times like a ritual. First, to slow the bleeding. Second, to begin the closure. Third, to fully seal the skin. But the magic doesn't work alone. Dittany, a rare restorative herb, is often needed alongside it to stimulate new tissue and prevent scarring. Without it, Vulnera Sanentur may halt death, but not restore wholeness. There's a quiet morality hidden in this spell's existence. Snape did not have to create it. He could have left Sectum Sempra irreversible, a mark of vengeance with no return. Instead, he wrote a cure, and that says more about him than any duel ever could. Levicorpus. Shame in midair. Levicorpus is not a spell of destruction, it's a spell of humiliation. When cast, the target is yanked into the air by their ankle, suspended upside down as though an invisible hook has caught them. Clothes fall. Dignity vanishes. It's theatrical, sudden, and inescapable, a curse designed for spectacle. The name itself is blunt, from Latin levare, to lift, and corpus, body. It translates simply to lift the body. But its meaning runs deeper in context. For Severus Snape, it was a silent weapon, originally intended to be cast non-verbally, quick, quiet, and degrading. Snape likely created Levicorpus with one target in mind, James Potter. The Marauders mocked and hexed him constantly, and Levicorpus offered a form of retaliation. Magic leaves a legacy. There's no physical harm caused by Levicorpus, but its damage is psychological. It flips the victim, strips their control, and makes them an exhibit. Not painful, but profoundly exposing. A perfect spell for someone who spent years being laughed at. Libracorpus. What Levicorpus begins, Libracorpus ends. This is the release spell, a silent reversal designed to return the suspended body to the ground, often without warning or grace. The etymology is again Latin. Liberare, meaning to free, and corpus, meaning body. Together, free the body. Like its counterpart, Libracorpus was crafted by Severus Snape during his school years and intended to function non-verbally. The pairing of these two incantations reveals something crucial about Snape's spellcraft. His magic was not only meant to afflict, but also to undo. For every lash, a latch. For every humiliation, an exit. We see this spell used most notably when James Potter, after publicly humiliating Snape with Levicorpus, reluctantly lowers him at Lily Evans' request. Libracorpus is rarely taught, rarely referenced, and rarely understood outside its original context. Muffliato. Silence is power. Muffliato is how you keep it. This charm fills the ears of everyone nearby with a soft, indistinct buzzing, like the faint hum of static or distant flies. Not painful, not suspicious, just enough to mask conversation. The mechanics are subtle but deliberate. Unlike a silencing charm which prevents sound from leaving the speaker, Muffliato targets the listener. It doesn't mute the room, it clogs the air between. Conversations can be held in plain sight, and no one hears a word. The name comes from the same linguistic root as muffle, to dampen sound, with the invented suffix iato lending a pseudo-Italian finish, as if disguising its true intent behind civility. Snape designed this charm for secrecy. Less attack, more advantage. For a student constantly under scrutiny and likely conducting potion experiments, private discussions, or covert spellcraft, Muffliato was essential in their arsenal. And yet, it was never taught at Hogwarts, not officially. That's because Muffliato violates a sacred boundary in wizarding education, the right to listen. Langlock. Some silences are forced. Langlock is a jinx of immediate consequence, binding the target's tongue to the roof of their mouth, rendering them utterly unable to speak. No words, no incantations, just mute panic. Its linguistic construction is simple but sharp. Lang from language or lingua, Latin for tongue, and lock meaning exactly that. It locks your voice inside your own mouth. Snape designed Langlock with utility in mind, a restraint tool in both verbal combat and actual dueling. In a world where spellcasting depends on speech, this charm disarms without disarming. The wand stays in hand, but becomes useless. Crucially, it works on both the living and the spectral. When Harry later discovers it in Snape's annotated book, he uses it on Peeves, the school's most uncontainable poltergeist. The result is eerie. Peeves, flailing and furious, unable to jeer. A walking noise machine reduced to silence. Harry also casts it on Argus Filch, the cantankerous caretaker, in moments of mischief. But even when used playfully, Langlock carries weight. It turns speech into a vulnerability. In the right hands, it's a defensive measure, a spell that speaks volumes by removing speech altogether. The toenail-growing hex. Every curse has its crown. This one wears a sock. Unlike Snape's other creations, which skew towards silence, secrecy, or savagery, the toenail-growing hex is pure magical mischief. It causes the target's toenails to grow at an absurdly accelerated rate. The spell has no known incantation in canon, but its effects are unmistakable. Curling nails, shredding through shoes, and immediate bewilderment. When Harry used it on Vincent Crabbe in his 6th year, the reaction was both entertaining and mildly alarming. The charm produced what the book called very entertaining results. And yet, like all Snape's spells, it's cleanly designed. No lasting harm, no permanent mark. Just chaos, theatrically timed. Counter-cursing Harry's jinxed broomstick. During Harry Potter's first Quidditch match in Philosopher's Stone, his broomstick suddenly begins to buck and twist uncontrollably in mid-air. This is not due to mechanical failure or lack of flying skill, it is the result of a jinx cast by Professor Quirrell, who is attempting to knock Harry off his broom. A sustained jinx like this requires eye contact and uninterrupted focus. Unbeknownst to Harry, Severus Snape notices the jinx and immediately begins a silent counter-curse. Positioned in the stands with a clear line of sight, Snape maintains visual contact with Harry while chanting the counter-curse under his breath, working against Quirrell's attack. The situation is so dire that Hermione, believing Snape is responsible, accidentally knocks over Quirrell instead, which breaks the original jinx. Snape's counter-curse buys critical time. Without his intervention, Harry could have been seriously injured or killed. In the following match, Snape takes the extra step of volunteering as referee to ensure Harry's continued safety. Teaching Harry Expelliarmus. In Chamber of Secrets, Severus Snape plays a pivotal role in teaching Harry Potter the disarming charm, Expelliarmus, during the school's short-lived dueling club. Gilderoy Lockhart, who lacks real dueling competence, organizes the club, but it's Snape who steps in to demonstrate proper technique. He uses the spell effectively to disarm Lockhart and later encourages students to try it themselves. Expelliarmus becomes his go-to spell throughout the series. Unlike offensive or lethal spells, Expelliarmus allows Harry to neutralize threats without causing harm, casting Vipera Evanesca to protect Harry. During the same dueling club session in Chamber of Secrets, Draco Malfoy conjures a live snake to attack Harry. The serpent slithers menacingly toward a fellow student, Justin Finch Fletchley. The atmosphere becomes tense with students unsure of what to do. Before Harry can intervene, Severus Snape steps forward and casts Vipera Evanesca, a spell that instantly vanishes the snake in a wisp of smoke. This swift action prevents possible injury or panic in the hall. While this may appear to be a neutral act of classroom management, it is notable that Snape acts with urgency to protect Harry and the other students. At this point, Snape does not yet know that Harry is a Parselmouth, someone who can speak to snakes. Therefore, he has no reason to assume Harry can control the situation. His use of Vipera Evanesca is a direct and deliberate act to neutralize a threat aimed at Harry during an uncontrolled duel. Intervening on the night of a full moon. In Prisoner of Azkaban, near the climax of the story, Severus Snape follows Harry, Ron, and Hermione into the Shrieking Shack, where he believes Sirius Black is attempting to murder Harry. At that time, Snape is unaware that Sirius is innocent and that Peter Pettigrew is alive. Snape's intention appears twofold: to capture Sirius Black and to protect Harry. However, when Remus Lupin forgets to take his Wolfsbane potion and transforms into a werewolf under the full moon, the situation escalates. Lupin becomes a serious threat to everyone nearby. Snape immediately steps between the werewolf and the students, placing his own body in front of Harry, Ron, and Hermione to shield them from attack. This act is completely selfless, as Lupin is a far more dangerous creature in his transformed state, and Snape has no defensive weapons drawn at that moment. Even though he is later knocked unconscious, Snape's instinctive move directly protects Harry and the others from a lethal threat, giving instruction on occlumency. In Order of the Phoenix, Albus Dumbledore tasks Severus Snape with teaching Harry the magical discipline of occlumency. This advanced mental defense technique is designed to shield the mind from external intrusion, especially from powerful legilimens like Lord Voldemort. Snape's sessions with Harry are intended to prevent Voldemort from accessing Harry's thoughts and emotions, which have become increasingly vulnerable. Each lesson involves Snape attempting to penetrate Harry's mind while instructing him on how to resist. Though their sessions are strained by mutual hostility and ultimately prove unsuccessful, the intent behind them is protective. Dumbledore entrusts this task to Snape because of his mastery in both occlumency and legilimency. Without this intervention, Harry's susceptibility to Voldemort's influence could have led to earlier manipulation or even possession. The fact that Voldemort is able to exploit Harry's mind later in the book only highlights how serious the danger was. Snape's effort, though marred by tension, was a critical attempt to safeguard Harry's consciousness. Providing a fake Veritaserum potion. In Order of the Phoenix, Dolores Umbridge, acting as the newly appointed Hogwarts High Inquisitor, attempts to coerce information from students using unethical and illegal methods. At one point, she demands that Severus Snape supply her with Veritaserum, a powerful truth serum, in order to interrogate Harry Potter about the whereabouts of Sirius Black and the activities of the Order of the Phoenix. Snape informs her that he has already given her his entire stock and that brewing a new batch would take weeks. When she later insists again, Snape provides her with a fake or ineffective version of the potion. This deception ensures that Harry remains protected from involuntary truth-telling, which could have exposed not only Sirius's location, but also sensitive Order operations. By giving Umbridge a placebo under the guise of compliance, Snape cleverly subverts her authority while shielding Harry from a major vulnerability. This subtle act of sabotage preserves the secrecy of the Order's network, alerting the Order to Harry's disappearance. Later in Order of the Phoenix, Harry experiences a false vision planted by Voldemort, showing Sirius Black being tortured in the Department of Mysteries. Believing it to be real, Harry attempts to alert someone but is unable to communicate the truth openly. During a tense encounter in Umbridge's office, Harry cryptically tells Snape, "He's got Padfoot at the place where it's hidden," referring to Sirius and the Order's headquarters. Although Snape outwardly dismisses the message, he understands its meaning. Recognizing the urgency, he immediately alerts members of the Order of the Phoenix. This results in the adult wizards arriving at the Ministry in time to save Harry and his friends from Death Eaters during the ensuing battle. While Snape does not physically go to the Ministry himself, his decision to act on Harry's coded warning is essential. Without his intervention, the students may have been killed or captured. This moment demonstrates Snape's ability to read between the lines and act decisively, allowing Harry to keep his potions textbook. In Half-Blood Prince, Harry comes into possession of an old potions textbook filled with handwritten notes and spell modifications by its previous owner, the Half-Blood Prince. These annotations dramatically improve Harry's performance in class and also introduce him to spells not taught in the curriculum, including several of Snape's own inventions. Although Snape later discovers Harry is using his old book, he never confiscates it until much later, and even then, only after a serious incident. By allowing Harry to continue using the annotated textbook, Snape indirectly helps him advance his magical skills, particularly in potion making. More importantly, the book contains the Sectum Sempra curse, which leads Harry to uncover its origin and, eventually, Snape's true identity. The skills Harry gains through this book assist him throughout the year, including in gaining Slughorn's memory, a key to understanding Voldemort's Horcruxes. Snape's passive allowance of this access operates as a concealed form of academic and strategic assistance, saving Harry from committing murder. In Half-Blood Prince, Harry uses the spell Sectum Sempra found in Snape's old textbook during a confrontation with Draco Malfoy in the bathroom. The spell, designed to cause deep slashing wounds, seriously injures Draco, who begins bleeding uncontrollably. Harry is horrified by the results, having not fully understood the power of the incantation. Snape arrives moments later and immediately performs advanced counter-curses and healing spells to stop the bleeding and stabilize Draco's condition. This intervention is medically life-saving, but it also protects Harry in a deeper way. Had Draco died, Harry would have been guilty of using a dark curse to commit murder while still a student. The psychological and legal consequences would have been severe, potentially altering the course of Harry's character arc and jeopardizing his future as a symbol of resistance. By healing Draco swiftly and discreetly, Snape prevents both a death and a moral downfall, keeping Harry's path intact during a volatile time, stopping Death Eaters from killing Harry. During the Battle of the Astronomy Tower in Half-Blood Prince, several Death Eaters gain access to Hogwarts and confront Dumbledore alongside Draco Malfoy. Harry, hidden and immobilized by Dumbledore's spell, watches as the situation escalates. After Dumbledore's death at Snape's hands, a prearranged act to preserve his cover, chaos erupts. As the Death Eaters flee, some attempt to kill or capture Harry on the way out. Snape intervenes to stop them, stating that the Dark Lord wants him for himself. This justification convinces the Death Eaters to back off, but Snape's true motive is protection. He ensures Harry is neither harmed nor taken to Voldemort prematurely. This moment is crucial. Voldemort still believes he must kill Harry personally due to the prophecy, and Snape uses this belief as a shield. By invoking Voldemort's own wishes, Snape protects Harry while maintaining his deep cover, ensuring that his position inside the Death Eater ranks remains undisputed. The idea of decoy Potters. In Deathly Hallows, the Order of the Phoenix plans to move Harry from Privet Drive to a safe house before he loses magical protection on his 17th birthday. Severus Snape, still posing as a loyal Death Eater, learns that Voldemort is aware of the exact date of Harry's relocation. Unable to warn the Order directly without blowing his cover, Snape acts covertly. He uses a Confundus charm on Mundungus Fletcher, implanting the idea of using multiple Harry lookalikes decoy Potters, to confuse the Death Eaters during the extraction. This strategy proves essential in the Battle of the Seven Potters. While casualties occur, the real Harry avoids capture and survives the ambush. The decoy tactic significantly disrupts the Death Eaters' coordination, preventing Voldemort from achieving his goal. Snape's method of planting the idea indirectly preserves his role as a double agent while playing a direct part in Harry's safe escape. His deception saves Harry without revealing his allegiance, providing the Sword of Gryffindor. In Deathly Hallows, after Dumbledore's death, Snape receives secret instructions via Dumbledore's portrait to deliver the Sword of Gryffindor to Harry. The sword is one of the few items capable of destroying Horcruxes, which are essential to Voldemort's immortality. Because Snape cannot be seen openly aiding Harry, he plants the real sword in the Forest of Dean near Harry's camp and then uses his Patronus, a doe, the same as Lily Potter's, to guide Harry to it. The sword is placed beneath a frozen lake, where Harry nearly drowns attempting to retrieve it. However, Snape remains hidden nearby to ensure Harry is not left to die. When Ron Weasley returns and saves Harry, it becomes clear that Snape had not only delivered the sword, but remained until Harry was safely retrieved. This act enables Harry and his allies to begin destroying Horcruxes, a vital step toward defeating Voldemort. Snape's calculated move preserves both secrecy and impact. Final instructions on how to defeat Voldemort. In Deathly Hallows, Severus Snape's final act of protection occurs moments before his death. After Voldemort orders Nagini to fatally wound him, Snape, bleeding and dying, summons Harry with his last strength. With no time to speak, he extracts a collection of memories and instructs Harry to take them. These memories are later viewed in the Pensieve, revealing the full extent of Snape's allegiance to Dumbledore and his enduring love for Lily Potter. Most critically, they disclose the truth that Harry himself is an unintentional Horcrux. A part of Voldemort's soul resides within him. This information is essential for Harry to understand that he must willingly sacrifice himself in order for Voldemort to be destroyed. While it appears to instruct Harry toward death, the insight enables Harry to survive Voldemort's killing curse and destroy the piece of Voldemort's soul inside him. Snape's final action is thus the key that allows Harry to end the Dark Lord's reign and live. Snape's motivations and redemption. One of the most striking differences between Snape in the books and Snape in the films lies in his motivations and the way his redemption arc is framed. In the books, Snape's allegiance to Dumbledore begins with an act that is, at its core, selfish. After overhearing Sybil Trelawney's prophecy about a child destined to defeat the Dark Lord, Snape rushes to deliver this information to Voldemort. He fails to recognize that this prophecy could endanger Lily Evans, the woman he has loved since childhood. When Voldemort interprets the prophecy as referring to the Potters, Snape is horrified. He immediately goes to Dumbledore, begging him to protect Lily. Crucially, in J.K. Rowling's text, Snape does not initially ask for James or Harry to be spared, only Lily. Dumbledore condemns this request, pointing out Snape's disregard for the lives of her husband and child. This paints Book Snape as selfish, motivated more by obsession with Lily than by any sense of nobility. The films handle this moment very differently. When Alan Rickman's Snape approaches Dumbledore, he simply says, "Hide them all." This change, small as it might seem, transforms the way we interpret the character. Instead of coming across as a man driven only by desperate love for one woman, he appears more selfless, concerned for the safety of the entire family. It makes him immediately more sympathetic to audiences who have not read the source material. The same difference carries over into the famous "after all this time" scene. In the books, when Dumbledore asks Snape whether he has grown to care for Harry, Snape does not answer with words of compassion. Instead, he casts his doe Patronus, shouting, "Expecto Patronum." His Patronus demonstrates that his protection of Harry has nothing to do with Harry himself. It is solely about preserving the memory of Lily, whose own Patronus was also a doe. The coldness of this response shows that his motivation never extends to true affection for James's son. In the films, however, the exchange is softened. When Dumbledore asks the same question, Snape silently produces the Patronus, wordlessly proving his loyalty. This subtle difference allows audiences to interpret his action as an act of love that extends to Harry himself because Harry is Lily's child. By omitting his sharp verbal denial, the film portrays him as far more emotionally noble and far less conflicted. The end result is two very different arcs. The book demands that readers reconcile Snape's bravery with his cruelty, forcing them to grapple with whether his sacrifices outweigh his sins. The films, in contrast, strip away many of those sins, leaving audiences with the story of a tragic hero. In the novels, Snape's redemption is complicated, uncomfortable, and morally gray. In the films, it is far easier to forgive him. Treatment of students. Another major difference between book Snape and film Snape is how he treats his students. In J.K. Rowling's novels, Snape is a consistently cruel, bullying teacher whose actions leave long-lasting emotional damage on those he teaches. The films, however, drastically tone down this behavior, often framing it as dry sarcasm or even as dark humor. In the books, Snape's bullying begins immediately. When Harry attends his first potions lesson in Philosopher's Stone, Snape singles him out harshly. Before the class has even begun, Snape sneers at him during roll call, treating him with outright hostility. Later in the same lesson, Snape humiliates Harry in front of the entire class, berating him for not knowing advanced potion-making questions that no first year could reasonably be expected to answer. This sets a precedent for the way Snape conducts himself throughout the series, using his authority as a teacher to belittle and undermine his students. The films include this scene, but the tone is softened. Alan Rickman's Snape comes across more as a strict disciplinarian than as a true bully. While he does mock Harry for not paying attention, the scene lacks the venom and outright hatred present in the book. The adaptation reframes Snape's hostility as stern teaching rather than sustained cruelty. Beyond Harry, the books show Snape as an equal opportunity tormentor. Neville Longbottom becomes one of his favorite victims. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Neville's greatest fear, revealed during a Bogart lesson, is Snape himself. The idea that a 13-year-old boy's worst nightmare is his teacher is deeply disturbing. Snape mocks Neville in class, belittles his intelligence, and once threatens to poison his pet toad, Trevor. In the films, Neville's fear is shown only briefly, used mainly for comic relief when he imagines Snape in his grandmother's clothes. The deeper psychological trauma that underpins this fear is never addressed on screen. Hermione also suffers heavily under Snape in the books. He repeatedly calls her a know-it-all in front of her peers, even when she provides correct answers. At one point, he goes so far as to say that it is a pity she was not killed during a dangerous mission, a remark that shocks the rest of the class. In Prisoner of Azkaban, the entire group glares at Snape after he calls her an insufferable know-it-all, because while many of them had said the same thing in jest, they recognize that from a teacher it is abusive. In the films, this insult is reframed as a throwaway joke, punctuated with Ron's amused agreement, which shifts the tone from cruelty to humor. Remus Lupin provides another clear difference. In the books, Snape actively despises Lupin and takes steps to sabotage him. He lets slip to his students that Lupin is a werewolf, exposing him to public scrutiny and ultimately costing him his job. In the films, this element is omitted. Lupin resigns after parents learn the truth about his condition, but Snape is not shown as the one who outed him. This choice removes a critical example of Snape's vindictiveness, replacing it with a narrative where Lupin leaves on his own terms. Taken together, these examples show a profound divide. Book Snape is not simply a strict teacher, he is a predator who uses his authority to belittle children. Film Snape, in contrast, is strict, intimidating, and sometimes unpleasant, but his actions never cross the line into outright sadism. This makes him appear far more professional, if stern, and removes much of the moral complexity surrounding his role at Hogwarts. Relationship with Harry. The dynamic between Severus Snape and Harry Potter is one of the most central threads of the series, and the differences in how it is handled across the books and films completely change how audiences perceive their rivalry. In the books, Snape's hatred of Harry is raw and constant. He sees Harry not as an individual but as an extension of James Potter, his childhood rival. Snape projects his bitter resentment onto the boy, using every opportunity to humiliate him. He makes cutting remarks about Harry's arrogance, belittles his academic achievements, and repeatedly undermines him in front of other students. Dumbledore himself remarks that Snape only sees what he expects to see, the arrogance of James, and cannot separate Harry from his father. This constant cycle of comparison creates a toxic relationship that defines much of Harry's school life. The films dilute this antagonism. While Snape still treats Harry with contempt, his behavior is presented more as strictness or occasional cruelty than as relentless hatred. For example, in Goblet of Fire, Snape punishes Harry for supposedly putting his name in the goblet, but the books show him doing far more, publicly humiliating Harry, trying to have him expelled, and openly declaring him arrogant. On screen, these moments are condensed, which reduces the intensity of their enmity. The occlumency lessons in Order of the Phoenix illustrate this difference starkly. In the books, these sessions are brutal. Snape uses legilimency, the magical art of invading minds, not only to test Harry's defenses but to demean him. He hurls insults about Harry's father and his godfather Sirius, deliberately trying to provoke him. Their lessons devolve into shouting matches, filled with anger on both sides. Harry resents the invasion of his privacy, and Snape uses the opportunity to assert dominance and relive old grudges. In the film, these lessons are portrayed with far less hostility. Snape still references James and Sirius, but the tone is more restrained. His sharp remarks are framed as a way to motivate Harry rather than to deliberately wound him. While he remains harsh, the film version comes across more as a severe teacher pushing a difficult pupil than as a man reliving his childhood traumas through verbal abuse. Another crucial difference lies in Snape's role in Voldemort's rise. In the books, it is explicitly confirmed that Snape was the spy who delivered Trelawney's prophecy to Voldemort, setting the chain of events in motion that led to Lily's death. This fact intensifies Harry's resentment when he learns it, deepening the rift between them. The films reference the prophecy but do not emphasize Snape's responsibility as clearly, leaving his guilt underexplored. The result is two distinct portrayals. In the novels, Snape and Harry are bitter enemies, their relationship poisoned by years of resentment, guilt, and trauma. Snape's hostility is personal, stemming from his unresolved hatred of James Potter. In the films, their conflict feels more like a clash between a stern teacher and a rebellious student. By reducing the venom in their interactions, the adaptations soften Snape's cruelty, and in turn make his later redemption seem less fraught and more inevitable. Key plot events omitted or changed. While tone and characterization create broad differences between Snape in the books and films, there are also several critical plot events that were either altered or left out entirely in the movie adaptations. These omissions dramatically shape how audiences interpret Snape's role in the story. James Potter saving Snape's life. In the novels, one of the earliest defining moments in Snape's relationship with the Marauders is the so-called werewolf prank. Sirius Black lures Snape toward the Whomping Willow, hoping to expose him to Remus Lupin during a full moon. This cruel act would almost certainly have killed Snape. James Potter intervenes at the last moment, pulling Snape back and saving his life. On paper, this looks heroic, but Snape refuses to accept it as such. To him, James was only protecting his own reputation, ensuring he would not be expelled for causing a fellow student's death. This incident deepens Snape's hatred of James while binding them together in a twisted debt. The films never reference this event, which removes an important layer of complexity from Snape's feelings toward Harry and his father. The prophecy. The prophecy delivered by Sybil Trelawney in 1980 is the axis on which the entire series turns. In Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore tells Harry that a Death Eater spy overheard part of it and reported back to Voldemort. The books later reveal that this spy was Snape himself. By relaying the prophecy, Snape unintentionally doomed Lily and James Potter. This is the single greatest source of his guilt and the foundation of his allegiance to Dumbledore. The films touch on the prophecy in broad strokes but never fully emphasize that Snape was the one who passed it on. As a result, viewers of the films may not understand just how directly responsible he was for the chain of events that followed. Lupin's dismissal. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Snape takes direct revenge on Remus Lupin by letting slip to his students that Lupin is a werewolf. This revelation spreads quickly through the school and to parents, forcing Lupin to resign. It is a petty and vindictive act, carried out after Lupin and Sirius expose Snape's own humiliations. In the film adaptation, this detail is absent. Lupin resigns of his own accord after parents express concern. By removing Snape's involvement, the film lessens his cruelty and erases an important example of his destructive influence. Fake Veritaserum. Dolores Umbridge's reign over Hogwarts in Order of the Phoenix provides another difference. When Umbridge attempts to force Harry to reveal information about Sirius and Dumbledore, she requests Veritaserum, a truth potion, from Snape. In the book, Snape gives her a fake potion, secretly protecting Harry from interrogation. This small but significant act of defiance demonstrates that, beneath his hostility, Snape was working in Harry's interests. The films omit this entirely, leaving audiences unaware of the quiet resistance he showed against Umbridge's tyranny. Passing Harry's warning about Sirius. Later in the same book, Harry tries to warn Snape that Sirius is in danger at the Department of Mysteries. Snape pretends not to understand Harry's cryptic message, leaving Harry furious. In the film, this moment passes without further explanation, creating the impression that Snape ignored Harry's plea. The books clarify that Snape did in fact relay the message to the Order of the Phoenix, which is why reinforcements arrive in time to help. This difference alters the audience's perception of Snape's reliability and loyalty. The Half-Blood Prince subplot. Finally, Half-Blood Prince contains an entire storyline about Harry's obsession with Snape's old potions textbook, filled with handwritten notes and improvements. The mystery of the book's previous owner builds tension throughout the novel, leading to the shocking reveal that Snape himself is the Half-Blood Prince. In the film, this subplot is heavily compressed. The book is referenced a handful of times, but the reveal feels rushed, appearing almost as an afterthought. The absence of this storyline reduces Snape's complexity, erasing the chance to explore his genius as a student and his connection to darker forms of magic. Taken together, these missing or altered plot points shift Snape's role dramatically. In the novels, he is deeply entangled in the web of events that shape Harry's world, his actions both destructive and redemptive. In the films, many of these details are absent, leaving a streamlined version of Snape who is less morally compromised, less guilty, and ultimately far easier to redeem. Portrayal and tone. The portrayal of Severus Snape differs not only in the events that unfold, but also in tone, demeanor, and emotional intensity. Much of this contrast stems from the way J.K. Rowling describes him on the page versus how Alan Rickman embodied him on screen. In the books, Snape is volatile. He frequently raises his voice, berates students in front of their peers, and loses his temper in explosive outbursts. One of the clearest examples occurs at the climax of Prisoner of Azkaban. When Sirius Black escapes and Snape believes Harry was involved, he shrieks in front of the headmaster, "He did it! I know he did it!" Rowling's text emphasizes the sheer volume and rage in his voice, underlining how easily Snape is overcome by emotion. These moments reinforce the image of a man whose anger simmers constantly beneath the surface, erupting whenever his past grievances resurface. The films, however, take a radically different approach. Rickman's Snape rarely raises his voice above a whisper. He is calm, measured, and intimidating in his restraint. His menace comes not from shouting, but from precise diction, prolonged pauses, and icy glares. This controlled delivery makes him appear calculating and deliberate rather than unhinged. For audiences unfamiliar with the books, Snape seems like a figure of cold authority, never a man consumed by his own rage. The books also depict Snape as openly arrogant and vindictive. He lashes out at students who remind him of his schoolyard tormentors, insults Hermione for her intelligence, humiliates Neville for his incompetence, and constantly projects his bitterness onto Harry. His cruelty is not subtle. It is obvious to everyone in the classroom. By contrast, the films soften these edges. Many of his most abusive remarks are removed or reframed, while others are delivered in a way that borders on dry humor. The infamous insufferable know-it-all line in Prisoner of Azkaban is a prime example. On the page, it horrifies the class and paints Snape as spiteful. On screen, it is followed by Ron's agreement, transforming it into a moment of levity. Another stark omission involves Snape's obsession with Lily. The books describe unsettling details, such as him cutting Lily out of a photograph with James and Harry, or his possessiveness when James begins courting her. These moments show a darker, almost unhealthy fixation on Lily's memory, raising uncomfortable questions about the purity of his devotion. None of this appears in the films. Instead, his love is presented as tragic and untainted, casting him in the role of a loyal, heartbroken man rather than an obsessive figure unable to let go of the past. The absence of these traits shifts the balance of Snape's character. In the novels, his cruelty and instability make his eventual redemption difficult to accept, forcing readers to weigh his bravery against years of abusive behavior. In the films, his calm demeanor and softened cruelty allow viewers to see him as a tragic hero from the outset.
In the Deathly Hallows, we see Severus Snape meet one of the most devastating ends in the entire series. On the floor of the Shrieking Shack, Voldemort's snake Nagini having torn through his throat, he bled out as he pressed his memories into Harry Potter's hands with the very last of his strength. He died looking into the eyes of the boy he'd spent 17 years protecting. The boy with green eyes. Lily's eyes. But what if things were different? What if someone got there just in time? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. So let's get right into it. Our story begins in the moments immediately after Voldemort swept out of the Shrieking Shack, leaving Snape for dead on the rotting floorboards. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had been hiding beneath the invisibility cloak the whole time. They watched. They heard everything. And now, Harry had the memories. And the battle was still raging. There was no time. They ran. But Hermione stopped. She stood just outside the shack's door, and something in her, that relentless, detail-oriented part of her brain that had carried them through every impossible situation, would not let her keep walking. She had Dittany. She always had Dittany. And Hermione Granger was not the kind of person who walked away from someone bleeding out on a floor. Not even him. She turned back, told Harry and Ron to go, and pushed through the door. Snape was still alive. Barely. His breathing was barely more than a rattle, his robes soaked through, but he was alive. She moved fast, kneeling beside him, uncorking the dittany, working with the steady hands of someone who had learned to keep her fear behind her actions rather than in front of them. The wound began to close. Not fully, not quickly, but enough. And somewhere in the middle of this, Snape's eyes opened. He stared up at this girl, this insufferable, brilliant girl who had driven him to distraction for 6 years, crouched over him in the dark, saving his life. He raised a hand to stop her. "Leave it, Granger." I said, "Leave it." Hermione didn't look up. She shushed Snape as she tries to concentrate. Snape closed his eyes. For the first time in longer than he could remember, somebody was helping him. Not because he was useful, not because they needed something from him, not out of fear or obligation, just helping him. He didn't know what to do with that. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, he saw her, Lily, not as she was at the end, but as she was when they were children, sitting by the river in Cokeworth, her red hair lit up by the afternoon, laughing, turning to look at him. He had not felt peace in so long that he almost didn't recognize it. But the cold floor pulled him back, and Hermione Granger was still there. By the time she'd done everything she could, the sounds from Hogwarts had changed. Something in the night had shifted. She didn't know yet that Harry had died in the forest. She didn't know yet that he'd come back. But she knew she couldn't move Snape alone. So she did something practical and found a way to wait. By the time the sun came up, Voldemort was gone. The Great Hall was full of the living and the dead. Harry stood in the middle of it and felt hollowed out. He'd seen Snape's memories in the Pensieve, every year of it, every sacrifice. He knew what Snape had been and what it had cost him. And Snape was dead. Or so he thought. 3 days later, Hermione pulled Harry aside and told him the truth. "He's alive, Harry. I went back. Madame Pomfrey's been treating him properly. He's going to recover. Does anyone else know?" "No, just us. And we need to decide what to do before it gets out on its own." What neither of them said, what both understood, was that if the wizarding world found out Severus Snape was alive before anyone could control that story, it wouldn't end well. The Prophet had already run 3 front pages calling him a murderer. The world had filed him neatly into its understanding of the war. Villain, Death Eater, killer of Dumbledore. The truth was more complicated than the headline. Hidden in a side room of the hospital wing behind a glamour Madame Pomfrey had cast without being asked, Snape was awake and furious. Not at Hermione. He was self-aware enough to understand what the girl had done, but furious at still being here, at being dragged back into a world that had already written him off, where he had no role left and no master left to serve. For 20 years, Snape's identity had been purpose. Spy, double agent, protector. Every choice built around a single objective: keep the boy alive long enough for the war to end. The war had ended, and Severus Snape had no idea who he was without it. He left as soon as he was well enough. Back to Spinner's End, the narrow, terraced house that smelled like old paper and failure. He hadn't been back in years. It was exactly as he'd left it. He sat in the dark and thought about Lily, about the river, about the day he lost her. Not the night in Godric's Hollow, but the day on the Hogwarts grounds, when he'd said the word that ended everything. He'd spent the rest of his life trying to make that right. He didn't know if he had. For 6 weeks, the secret held. Then, a junior healer at St. Mungo's mentioned it to someone, who mentioned it to someone else, and the Prophet ran it on a Thursday morning with these words across the front page: "He's alive." The wizarding world reacted exactly as you'd expect. Owls flooded the ministry, demanding immediate arrest. Survivors of the Caro's year at Hogwarts were speaking to reporters. The public gallery of the Wizengamot was standing room only on the morning of Snape's inquiry. Parents of students who'd been punished. Order members. Ministry officials who had quietly collaborated with the regime. Reporters lining the upper tiers. All of them waiting. And then, Severus Snape walked in. No robes. Plain dark clothing. Nothing theatrical. He looked exactly like what he was. A man who had survived something that should have killed him and hadn't yet decided if that was a good thing. He sat in the chair at the center of the chamber. The chains didn't close. He'd come of his own free will. Before the questioning could begin, Harry Potter stood up in the witness gallery. "I know most of you came here expecting a trial. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that nothing happened, because it did. What I'm going to tell you is what I saw with my own eyes in a pensieve. Because before you decide his fate, you deserve the truth. Not the headline. The truth. Harry told them everything. The unbreakable vow Dumbledore had asked Snape to make, and why. The night on the astronomy tower, and what had actually happened there. The silver doe in the forest of Dean. The Patronus that led Harry to the sword of Gryffindor in the darkest stretch of the war. Always. Dumbledore had said, when he asked Snape if he still cared for Lily Evans after all those years. And Snape's Patronus had taken the shape of a doe. Always. The gallery went very still. I know what happened at Hogwarts during the last year was terrible. I don't ask you to forget it. But I ask you to understand that the man in that chair spent 20 years doing the hardest, loneliest, most thankless thing imaginable. Because he loved someone. He saved my life. More than once. And I would not be standing here without him. The gallery erupted. Half the room was on its feet. Parents shouting. Reporters scribbling. Officials whispering in urgent clusters. The vote that followed was long and genuinely contested. In the end, the Wizengamot found that the killing of Albus Dumbledore was a mercy performed at Dumbledore's own explicit instruction, confirmed by pensieve evidence, and dismissed the murder charge. His conduct as headmaster was formally recorded, not excused, but weighed against his role as a double agent. Narrowly, very narrowly, they chose not to imprison him. He was cleared. The crowd did not cheer. Families walked out. Reporters left to write conflicted articles. Snape sat in the chair and showed nothing on his face. After the gallery cleared, Harry approached him. It's over. You're free. Thank you, Potter. A pause. Don't make a habit of it. In the months that followed, Snape disappeared from public life as completely as he could manage. He declined every interview. He declined the Order of Merlin 3 times. He moved out of Spinner's End and settled somewhere quieter. More books, less history. And occasionally, not often, Harry Potter appeared at his door. They never became friends, exactly. But they became something. Something without a name. Built from shared history and mutual wariness. And the understanding that they were, in some hard-to-articulate way, the 2 people in the world who knew what those years had actually felt like. He went to Godric's Hollow on a Thursday. No particular reason. He apparated to the edge of the village and walked in with his collar up against the autumn cold. There was a war memorial. He walked past it without looking. He found it at the edge of the churchyard. Lily and James Potter. The dates. The inscription beneath. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. He stood in front of it for a long time and said nothing. He had imagined this moment hundreds of times. Imagined having some perfect thing to say. Something equal to what she'd meant to him. To the 20 years spent in her name. But standing here in the cold, with dead leaves moving across the grass, he found he didn't have perfect words. He only had true ones. You'd have hated how long it took me. He's alive, your boy. He's going to be all right. I kept my promise. He heard footsteps on the gravel path. He didn't turn around. He knew who it was. Harry Potter stood beside him at the grave and said nothing. He didn't try to fill the silence. Just stood there. 2 people looking at the same stone for different reasons. And exactly the same reason. After a while, Harry spoke. She would have wanted you here, I think. You don't know that. They stood there until the light began to fade. One autumn morning, Harry came by with news. Ginny was expecting again. A boy, they'd been told. He sat down across from Snape and told him what they'd decided to name him. Snape looked at him for a long moment. That's a terrible name, Potter. Yeah. Don't let the boy be sorted into Slytherin. Why not? Because he'll have enough to live up to already. Something passed between them that neither would ever put into words. Harry nodded. He picked up his coat and left. And Severus Snape sat alone in the room he'd made for himself, surrounded by books, autumn light through the window, and thought about a girl with red hair and a river, and the first time he'd ever seen magic. He thought about a promise he'd made and kept for 20 years. He had not expected to survive. He had not expected any of this. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't the worst thing that had ever happened to him.